Hello, guys, and welcome back to Stories of Hope. I'm here today with Kirsten, and she's going to share a little bit of her story with chronic illness. So I met her actually at Asbury at a chronic illness support group, and it's just been really cool to get to know her a little bit, some support in the different shared experiences that we've had. So I'm excited for you guys to get to hear a little bit of her story, and myself too. And just to learn from how she's found hope in her journey. So, Kirsten, can you tell us a little bit about what illness you have and what your experience has been like with that?
Yeah. So I have ulcerative colitis. It is an IBD, autoimmune disease, chronic. I've had it for 14 years. So I was diagnosed in 2006, like the summer before my 7th birthday, I think. All that math adds up.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've had this illness for a long time. And I feel like the majority of my experience with it has actually just been since like the middle of high school on, even though I had it, way longer than that. It was really just kind of like a thing in the back of my mind for like most of like grade school till about 10th grade. So yeah, ulcerative colitis is not fun for one thing, but I think the way that has most affected me is just like in the daily life, like frequency with using the bathroom, or like the meds that I have to do, or things that like foods that I have to watch, and like dietary restrictions. So that's like the main ways that it affects me daily, kind of, I guess. So, and the way that it kind of works is that like I might have a flare up. So basically my symptoms come back basically. And so there's like these periods of flaring and then remission. And so there's never, with I think all chronic illnesses, there is technically a cure. But there are treatments for it, and those treatments work to put you in remission. And so it's just kind of like the 14-year cycle of flaring and then remission and then flaring and remission. And usually, like, for me, it's different for everybody, but for me, like, my flares last 6 to 8 months, and then I'll get a year or two of remission, and then it'll kind of go back over again. But kind of going like back to what I said, like most of my experience with this illness has been since like the middle of high school, because that's kind of when my flares started getting longer. I was hospitalized the summer before 10th grade, which is in and of itself kind of a miracle, because it's the first and only time I've been hospitalized for it. And a lot of people with UC are hospitalized multiple times, and just it wreaks havoc on their body. And so just that fact in and of itself, kind of jumping ahead, lends a little bit to the hope that I have found throughout this journey. So yeah, since 10th grade, it's on again, off again, but the flares have like lasted longer than usual. And it's been harder to find like a combination of medicines to keep me at bay, keep it at bay.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
What does a flare look like for you?
So I'm not gonna go super into detail with some of like with the main symptoms, because they're not like pleasant to imagine, but basically, like, I guess it would be like, the best way I can put this, eating bad Taco Bell every single day for 6 months, and the effects that follow that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so and that's just like, that's specifically from everything that's happening in my colon. But then there are other things like fatigue is one. Like it's just so much energy drained in like my body trying to handle this thing, and side effects from different medicines. So one of the like common routes to go on during a flare is steroids, prednisone specifically, and so that has a lot of different side effects like weight gain and just like constantly feeling like I need to eat something and never feeling full. That kind of lends to that. So side effects to medicines, I think, are like, that's like one of the more prominent things that I experienced during a flare, other than my actual symptoms themselves, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then like I'll go ahead and share this. Why not? I've had probably at least 5 colonoscopies since all of this started, and that's not typically a procedure that you see until you turn 50. And even then, it's just kind of like a checkup. So that's another thing that happens often. And honestly, that's whether or not I'm flaring. That's just like because the longer you have this disease, the greater the chances of like colon cancer. And then depending on what medicines you're taking, other kinds of cancer. And so a lot of the colonoscopies are really just like checking to make sure that, you know, there aren't cancer causing. Yeah, so that's kind of the things that like that flares bring on.
Yeah. So how have you found hope and strength in the midst of all of these confusing symptoms and like not being able to control the flares and just, yeah, learning how to manage a chronic illness?
So I guess the like journey of hope, if you will, kind of also started the same summer that I was put in the hospital. Kind of at the same time, I was experiencing a season of depression and just like not knowing who I was and not like knowing my identity in God. And so after that summer, like during my 10th grade year, the Lord really started working on my identity as a whole, and not just as someone with ulcerative colitis, but just me as a person, really. And so I think the fact that those two things kind of like coincided, like the lowest point of my disease and beginning to discover my identity, I think that really was the beginning of like feeling hope at all. And honestly, I'm saying that now, like not having realized then that that's what it was. And yeah, hope it's not something that I like have felt often, but I know that that's where like the seed was planted, and I know that like from that moment on there would be a point where I actually started to feel hope. And honestly, that was this past year. So my most recent flare started at the end of freshman year of college, and lasted until this past December 2019. So like one time last semester, I was listening to like a sermon online from my home church, and he was talking about the pastor was talking about how his wife a long time ago was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. They didn't say which one, and how like for 10 years the Lord had just been sustaining her through medicine and just like different medical things. And then at some point last semester, she realized that like she had never actually prayed for healing. And healing isn't necessarily something that I had ever prayed for consistently. There were a few like moments where, or like few days or times or whatever, like I would ask the Lord for healing, but it was never something that I pursued persistently. And so after hearing that, and after hearing her journey of healing, it was like this is like the seed of hope that was planted back then, like poked up out of the ground, if you will. And I was like, oh, that's something that I ought to be doing, because like, and not that the Lord has to hear my prayers in order to heal me, but just like pursuing that, I knew would bring me closer to the Lord. And whether he healed me completely or not, like, it was something worth pursuing. So I like got my family together, and I told him, I was like, this is like my goal for 2020 basically, is like, I want to be healed, and I don't know who doesn't want to be healed, but like, this is something that I genuinely want to pursue. And so in December, I saw my GI, my gastroenterologist, and I had been on a new medication for like a year, for about a year, and like, it was kind of doing its job, but not really getting me into a remission where we wanted it to be. And so we were talking about like, what new combination of medicines can we do? And so we talked about it, and discovered something. And so I started doing that. And right around that time is when I started like praying for healing. And within a few weeks, like, my symptoms started going away, and I just noticed that I was feeling considerably better, had more energy, and like wasn't experiencing my symptoms as much. And I was like,
Wow.
Man, like,
That's awesome.
I know, like, yes, I was on a new combination of medicines and it was working, but at the same time, it's like, that doesn't happen without the Lord say so, And so, and so I've been, I think at this point, I've at least been in remission since probably about February, and still working that. And I'm in the season of life where I'm transitioning from my pediatric GI to my adult GI, and so that's like been a little stressful, kind of nerve-wracking, but just through it, like, I have this newfound hope that I have never known before, just because of pursuing that healing through the Lord.
Wow, that's amazing. It's so cool to see how God is working through that and listening, and and healing, I guess, it's something, it's kind of complicated in some ways to understand, because there's so many sides to healing and so many ways, like methods of healing. So it's not like a one catch-all kind of idea, but it's really cool to see how God does answer those prayers and does work in, even if it's through medicine and through doctors, like bringing you to the right places, and that, like, that's still something that God is directing in your life. So it's super cool. And so what is one thing that you would like for people now in this current I guess climate and situations that are going on in the world, what is something that you think people would like to know, or that they can gain from your experience?
Oh man, this is a good question. And I wrote an essay at the end of the year that kind of talked about this a little bit, but I really think that the biggest thing is, like, you really don't know what's going on in someone's life, and a lot of chronic illnesses are invisible illnesses. And so, like, all the symptoms, everything that's happening is inside their body. It's not necessarily like a physical appearance of a symptom. And so you really never know what's going on in someone's life, if they are, if their immune system is compromised. And so just there's been a lot of media things about wearing your mask and how important it is, and just heard so many stories of people being just inconsiderate and like really just not caring to like wear their masks, or they're coughing in people's faces, and it completely like baffles me why someone might do that in general, but especially like when you don't know what's happening inside someone's body. And so if there's one thing that I wanted people to know, is just like, wear your mask. First of all, do what you can to, if you're not worried about yourself, do what you can to protect others. But also just like, if someone comes to you like and they're telling you about their experience, like something that they're feeling, like if they're feeling ill or something that doesn't feel right in their body, believe them, because like, you're not in their body, you can't feel what they're feeling, and so, you know, what gives you the right to doubt that? And yeah, and also just going back to experiencing like fatigue and just like exhaustion, like chronic illnesses take it out of you. There is so many areas where your energy is just sapped. And so just like understanding that if someone doesn't want to do something and they just, you know, they don't have energy, and I know we're in kind of a time of like semi-quarantine where some people are staying in and some people are going out, and things are starting to open back up, and just like, you know, the 3 months of being at home, it doesn't make up for a lifetime of, you know, of chronic illness, and so there still just is a huge lack of energy. And so just being mindful, and if you can't understand, like if you can't empathize, at least try to put yourself in their shoes. And then a big one is belief. Just like, believe what they're saying, believe what they're feeling, and don't be inconsiderate about it.
Yeah, that's so good. I think that's one of the really hard things with like chronic illnesses, especially like those that don't have as many outward manifestations, I guess. Like, you can't see it. So it's hard to understand and like believe that what they're saying, you know, is what they're really experiencing, because you see them doing normal things, and it's difficult because with a chronic illness, you know, you're trying to live like as normal of a life as you can with that. It doesn't mean that those things are like easy for you, but like you're still trying to manage that and do life, you know. So I think I agree with that. Just being willing to listen and believe what people are saying, and be willing to support them, and not like pushing to say like, oh, well, you need to do this or you need to do that, because like there's so much pressure, you know, to try to do so much, and there is like the fatigue and like there are limits, you know. So but yeah, definitely, thank you so much for sharing. Is there anything else that you would like to share?
So actually, one more thing, I think. When I started like pursuing praying for healing, it was an interesting like culmination, I guess, of feelings, because on the one hand I was really excited about it and I wanted to share it with my friends, and on the other hand I know that there are a lot of people out there, including some of my friends from school, who have been burned, especially by people in the church, who have said like, oh, you're sick because you're not praying enough, or you don't believe, or you don't have enough faith. And I guess another thing that isn't necessarily related to COVID, but just another thing that I would want people to know is like, don't bring that into a conversation. Like, it's not the amount of faith that we have isn't what brings us healing. It's you know, the Lord's will. And And even saying that in and of itself, it feels kind of scary, because then you start thinking, well, how can it not be in the Lord's will to heal me? But yeah, just things like that, saying like, oh, you're not praying enough, or you don't believe enough. That's not encouraging at all. It's extremely discouraging, and it has hurt. Things like that have hurt a lot of people. And so I guess that's like another thing that like I would want people to know is like, if you don't know what to say, just give them a hug, or say like, how can I help, or what can I do, or is there anything that I can do, instead of just assuming that they are the cause for their their illness or something.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, because healing doesn't look the same for everyone, and like we're not all going to be healed. I mean, not in this earth at least, and not in the physical sense, that's not the ultimate reality, and the ultimate healing. The ultimate healing is really like our spiritual healing is what is the most important. And sometimes that like the physical healing is a part of that too. But it doesn't necessarily mean that for everyone that they're going to experience that, because we're all, if you think about, so one thing I thought about sort of with physical healing is it's like, we're all going to die anyways. So even if you're physically healed at some point, like that doesn't mean that you'll never get sick again, or that you'll not die just because, so it's like, it is a part of experiencing God and the way of like the redemption. But it's not like the end all be all. Like the ultimate healing is the spiritual healing that's going to last beyond our decaying bodies. Because if you think about it that way. But yeah, I think that's a really good point to bring out, because that can be really challenging, and also just like, I mean, even for myself, just feeling this kind of like sense of kind of carrying that of like, I like need to get better kind of thing, like a pressure sort of that, that you can feel like, or even like you were saying a little bit about like almost like your fault, like, it's not your fault that you have this, but it sort of feels like it in some ways, like right. Are you not doing things right? Or so yeah, I think just the support from other people, just like being there and listening and believing. I think some of the things that can be really challenging are when people try to sort of question what you're doing, or like your treatments and things, and that can be really challenging, because there's a lot of different opinions and a lot of different methods of treatments and healings that people go on, and I think that's something that can be, so it's probably better to, now there are certain situations, if it's a close friend and something that might help, like that you could bring that up, but usually that's something that can be misconstrued or make you feel sort of like, oh, am I not doing the right thing? And bring out that, I don't know if you've had that kind of experience, but yeah, good stuff. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, I really enjoy doing this. Thank you for asking me to do this.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you everyone for watching this week, and we will come out with some more videos in the future, so be on the lookout. I thank you that you are here and listening and learning and willing to hear some of these stories and learn and grow through that. So thank you again. Bye.